Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Terran Defiance, watching the stars through the reinforced viewport. The massive dreadnought cut through space like a blade, its dark hull bristling with weapon arrays that most civilized species would consider overkill. Behind her, the bridge crew worked in their characteristic human efficiency, calm, focused, and ready for whatever hell the universe might throw at them. Captain, Communications Officer Rodriguez called out, his voice carrying that particular tension that meant something big was happening. "We're receiving a distress signal." Sarah turned from the viewport, her combat boots clicking against the metal deck plating. "Put it through." The main screen flickered to life, showing a grainy transmission filled with static. Through the interference, a reptilian face appeared scaled, with large yellow eyes that held unmistakable terror. This is Ambassador Vethkar of the Zephyrian Diplomatic Corps," the alien gasped, its voice translated by the ship's AI. We are trapped on the planet Kronos 7 in the Helix Nebula. The Devourers have come. They've taken our escorts, our defenses. By the Great Light, they're feeding on our people." The transmission cut to static, then resumed with increased desperation. "Please, any ship that receives this, we have children here. Hundreds of younglings. The Galactic Council has abandoned us. They say the risk is too great, that no ship can survive the Devourer swarm. But we're dying here. The signal died completely. Sarah felt the familiar cold anger that had carried her through a dozen campaigns settling into her bones. Around the bridge, her crew waited for orders, their faces grim. They'd all heard the stories about the Devourers, a biomechanical plague that consumed entire star systems, leaving nothing but dead worlds in their wake. "Rodriguez, send a message to Admiral Hayes. Tell him we're diverting to the Helix Nebula." Captain, her XO, Commander James Park, stepped forward. The Galactic Council specifically ordered all ships to maintain quarantine protocols around that sector. If we go in there, we might save some lives," Sarah cut him off. "The Council's been playing politics while entire species get wiped out. I'm done with their cowardice." She turned to address the entire bridge crew. "I won't lie to you people. The Devourers are nasty business. They're part machine, part organic horror, and they've been cleaning house across 3 sectors. The fancy ships of the Council navies can't handle them, too delicate, too dependent on their precious shields and energy weapons." A grim smile crossed her face. "But we're not fancy. We're human. We're from a death world, and we build our ships like we build everything else, tough, mean, and ready to take a beating. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to punch through whatever's waiting for us in that nebula, we're going to save those people, and we're going to show the galaxy what happens when you mess with the innocent." The bridge erupted in a chorus of "Aye, Captain," that would have made a lesser species wet themselves. "Helm, set course for the Helix Nebula, maximum burn. Engineering, I want everything our reactors can give us. Weapons, start warming up the kinetic batteries. And somebody get me a tactical assessment of what we're walking into." As the Terran Defiance began its acceleration toward the nebula, Sarah allowed herself a moment of private reflection. The human fleet had been the laughingstock of the Galactic Council when they'd first made contact 5 years ago. Their ships were crude, their technology primitive, and their tactics barbaric. The elegant swanships of the Eltarians, the crystalline fortresses of the Vegan Collective, the living vessels of the Zephyrians, all were considered vastly superior to the ugly, angular blocks of metal that humans called warships. But there was something those civilized species had forgotten in their millennia of peace and prosperity: sometimes, ugly and mean beats pretty and smart. The first hint of trouble came 3 hours into their burn toward the nebula. Lieutenant Kim at the sensor station called out, "Captain, I'm detecting debris clouds ahead. Massive ones. On screen." The viewport shifted to show a field of twisted metal and organic matter drifting through space. Sarah recognized the elegant curves of Altarian hull designs, the prismatic fragments of vegan armor, and the bone-white remains of Zephyrian bioships. "Jesus," whispered someone on the bridge. "How many ships?" Sarah asked. "At least 40, Captain. Maybe more. This looks like an entire task force." Sarah nodded grimly. The Galactic Council had sent their best, their most advanced ships and crews. And the Devourers had torn through them like paper. Any survivors? Negative. No life signs, no active power sources. Whatever hit them, it was thorough. Keep us moving. And keep your eyes open. 2 hours later, they reached the outer edge of the Helix Nebula. The space around them took on an eerie quality as the nebula's gases diffused the light of distant stars into a sickly green glow. The Terran Defiance pressed on, its sensors straining to penetrate the ionized gas clouds. Contact. Lieutenant Kim called out. Multiple contacts, bearing 27 Mark 15. There. God in heaven, Captain, they're huge. The main screen showed shapes moving through the nebula, organic curves mixed with mechanical angles, like someone had grafted machine parts onto the skeleton of some deep-sea nightmare. The smallest was the size of a frigate. The largest dwarfed even the Terran Defiance. Devourers, Sarah said quietly. How many? 43 confirmed contacts, Captain. And they're moving to intercept. Sarah felt the familiar pre-battle calm settling over her. All hands, this is the captain. Battle stations. We are about to engage the Devourer swarm that has been terrorizing the galaxy. Remember your training, trust your equipment, and watch each other's backs. We're going to punch through to those survivors, and we're going to bring them home. The ship's klaxons began to wail as the crew raced to their combat positions. Throughout the Terran Defiance, blast doors sealed, weapons systems came online, and damage control teams prepared for the inevitable hits they would take. Kinetic batteries charged and ready, reported Weapons Officer Torres. Missile tubes loaded with nuclear-tipped ship killers, added her deputy. Armor plating angled for maximum deflection, called out the damage control chief. Sarah nodded. Unlike the energy-based weapons favored by most galactic civilizations, human military technology was based on the simple principle of hitting things very hard with very dense objects. Their kinetic weapons fired tungsten penetrators at significant fractions of the speed of light. Their missiles carried nuclear warheads that could crack a moon. Their armor was layers of compressed metals and ceramics designed to absorb and distribute impact energy. It was crude, brutal, and effective. Enemy closing fast, Kim reported. They're not using any recognizable drive system. Looks like they're just willing themselves forward. Wonderful, Sarah muttered. Distance? 50,000 kilometers and closing. We'll be in weapons range in 30 seconds. All weapons, prepare to engage. Target the largest ones first. If we can take down their heavies, the smaller ones might think twice. The first Devourer ship filled the screen as it approached, a nightmare fusion of organic curves and mechanical brutality. Parts of its hull seemed to pulse with alien life, while other sections bristled with weapon arrays that looked like they'd been grown rather than built. Weapons range in 10 seconds, Torres reported. Fire as you bear. The Terran Defiance shuddered as its main battery opened up. 12 tungsten penetrators, each the size of a telephone pole, screamed across the void at 90% of light speed. The targeting computer had calculated their path perfectly. All 12 rounds hit the lead Devourer in its center mass. The result was spectacular. The alien ship seemed to convulse as the kinetic energy tore through its biomechanical hull. Chunks of flesh and metal sprayed into space, and the creature's ship, whatever it was, began to list to one side. Direct hit! Torres shouted. Target is damaged but still functional. Keep firing. All weapons, continuous barrage. The human ship became a storm of violence. Kinetic rounds hammered into the Devourer formation while nuclear missiles streaked toward their targets. The enemy returned fire with weapons that seemed to bend space itself, sending waves of destructive energy toward the Terran Defiance. The first hit nearly threw Sarah from her feet. The ship's armor held, but she could feel the deck plating groan under the impact. Damage report. Forward armor compromised, deck 7 through 9. No casualties yet, but we can't take many more like that. Sarah gritted her teeth. This was where human engineering showed its true value. Other species built their ships to avoid damage, humans built theirs to survive it. Evasive maneuvers. Don't let them get a clean shot. The Terran Defiance began to weave through space, using its superior maneuvering to avoid the worst of the enemy fire. Meanwhile, its weapons continued their relentless barrage. A second Devourer ship exploded as 3 nuclear missiles found their mark, and a third began to fall behind as kinetic rounds shredded its propulsion systems. But there were still over 40 of them, and they were closing fast. Captain, Commander Park reported, we're receiving reinforcement signals. The rest of the fleet is en route. Sarah allowed herself a moment of relief. The human fleet might be small compared to the armadas of the major powers, but every ship was a fortress designed to take punishment and dish it out in return. How long until they arrive? 40 minutes, Captain. We need to hold them off until then. All ships, form defensive formation. We're going to show these things what happens when you corner a pack of angry humans. The next 20 minutes were a blur of violence. The Terran Defiance and its escorts fought with the desperate fury of cornered animals. Human ships might not be as elegant as their galactic counterparts, but they were built by a species that had survived ice ages, plagues, and world wars. They were designed to keep fighting even when everything went wrong. And things were definitely going wrong. The destroyer Vengeful Spirit took a direct hit that vaporized its entire forward section, but kept fighting with its remaining weapons. The cruiser Iron Maiden lost its primary armor, but its secondary plating held long enough for it to ram a wounded Devourer ship, taking both vessels out of the fight. Sarah watched her fleet die around her and felt the cold rage that had carried humanity through its darkest hours. These alien horrors thought they could terrorize the galaxy without consequences. They were about to learn otherwise. All remaining ships, close formation. We're going to punch through to the planet. The survivors of the human fleet, barely half their original number, formed a tight spearhead and accelerated toward Chronos 7. The Devourers swarmed around them, but the concentrated firepower of the human ships carved a path through their ranks. Planet in sight, Kim reported. I'm detecting large concentrations of Devourer biosignatures on the surface, but also. Captain, there are definitely survivors down there. Zephyrian life signs, concentrated in what looks like a fortified compound. Sarah nodded. Prepare for orbital bombardment. We're going to clear a landing zone. Captain, Park interrupted, we're receiving a transmission from the surface. The screen flickered to show Ambassador Vethkar again, but the proud diplomat was barely recognizable. His scales were dull with exhaustion, and his eyes held the hollow look of someone who had seen too much death. Human vessel, this is Ambassador Vethkar. We cannot believe you came. The Council ships tried to reach us yesterday, but the Devourers destroyed them all. How did you? We can discuss that later, Ambassador. Right now, we need to get you and your people off that planet. Can you reach the extraction point we're about to clear? We have 300 survivors, including 60 younglings. Many are injured. We can reach any point within 5 kilometers of our current position, but beyond that. He shook his head. The Devourers have consumed everything. The very ground crawls with their spawn. Sarah felt her jaw tighten. We'll make it work. Stand by. She turned to Torres. I want every nuclear weapon we have targeted on the surface around that compound. Create a dead zone 2 kilometers wide. That's going to irradiate the entire area, Captain. Better radioactive than eaten alive. Do it. The Terran Defiance unleashed hell on the planet below. Nuclear fire blossomed across the surface as 43 warheads detonated in sequence. The Devourer biosignatures vanished from the targeted area, leaving only scorched earth and lethal radiation. Landing zone clear, Torres reported. But the radiation levels are survivable with proper equipment, Sarah finished. Prep the assault shuttles with full NBC protection. We're going down there. Commander Park stepped forward. Captain, I should lead the ground team. If something happens to you. Nothing's going to happen to me, Sarah cut him off. And these people have been through hell. They deserve to see the face of the person who came to save them. 20 minutes later, Sarah was strapped into the lead assault shuttle as it screamed toward the planet's surface. The shuttle was another example of human engineering philosophy. It was essentially a flying brick with enough armor to survive a direct hit from a tank and enough weapons to fight off a small army. The surface of Kronos 7 was a hellscape. The Devourers had consumed everything: forests, cities, even the topsoil itself. Only bare rock remained, pockmarked with the organic growths that marked their presence. The nuclear bombardment had turned a 10-square-kilometer area into a glass crater, but beyond its edges, Sarah could see movement, shapes that might once have been animals or plants, but were now something else entirely. "LZ in sight," the pilot called out. "Setting down in 30 seconds. Sarah checked her weapon one last time. The standard human assault rifle was another piece of primitive technology that had earned scorn from galactic observers. It fired chemically propelled projectiles instead of energy beams, and its ammunition was designed to fragment inside the target, causing maximum tissue damage. The shuttle touched down with a grinding impact that would have shattered the delicate bones of most galactic species. Sarah and her 20-person assault team stormed out, their powered armor making them look like mechanical demons in the swirling radioactive dust. "Perimeter secure," Sergeant Martinez reported. "No immediate contacts, but I'm seeing movement about 3 clicks out." Sarah nodded and activated her suit's communicator. "Ambassador Vethkar, this is Captain Chen. We're on the ground. What's your status?" "Captain, we can see your shuttles. We're moving toward you now, but we have wounded who cannot travel quickly." "Copy that. We're moving to meet you halfway." The assault team spread out in a classic human formation, overlapping fields of fire, mutual support, and redundant communications. They moved through the devastated landscape like ghosts of metal and death, their sensors sweeping for threats. The first devourer spawn they encountered was barely recognizable as having once been a local herbivore. It had been transformed into something with too many legs, too many teeth, and an appetite for anything that moved. Sarah put 3 rounds through its center mass, and it dropped without a sound. "Contact front," Martinez called out. "Multiple spawn, moving in from the northeast." Sarah switched to her tactical display and saw them, dozens of red dots converging on their position. "All units, defensive positions. Remember, these things used to be people. Show them mercy." The next few minutes were a symphony of violence. Human weapons chattered in the thin air as the assault team cut down wave after wave of devourer spawn. The creatures were fast, but they were also predictable. They attacked in straight lines, driven by hunger rather than tactics. Friendlies approaching from the south, called out the team's sensor operator. "Looks like our passengers." Sarah looked through her rifle scope and saw them, a ragged column of Zephyrian civilians moving through the devastation. They were tall, graceful beings under normal circumstances, but these survivors were bent with exhaustion and terror. Many carried younglings in their arms, and several had to be supported by their companions. "Cover them," Sarah ordered. "We're not losing anyone today." The assault team formed a protective corridor around the civilians as they made their way toward the landing zone. More spawn appeared, drawn by the movement, but human firepower kept them at bay. Ambassador Vethkar was among the last to reach the shuttles. Up close, Sarah could see the toll the ordeal had taken on him. His diplomatic robes were torn and stained, and his hands shook as he climbed aboard. "Captain," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I must ask, why did you come?" "The Council declared this system lost. Even our own people wrote us off." Sarah secured her weapon and looked at the ambassador. "Because that's what humans do. We don't leave people behind." The shuttle lifted off just as a fresh wave of spawn reached the landing zone. Below them, the planet burned with radioactive fire, but the survivors were safe. Back aboard the Terran Defiance, Sarah stood in the medical bay watching the ship's doctors tend to the Zephyrian refugees. The younglings were the hardest to see, their large eyes held a terror that no child should ever experience. "Captain," Commander Park approached, "we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council. They're demanding an explanation for our actions." Sarah felt her jaw tighten. "Put them through." The communication screen flickered to life, showing the elegant form of Counselor Altyreth, the Altarian representative. His swan-like features were set in disapproval as he spoke. Captain Chen, your actions in the Helix Nebula represent a gross violation of Council protocols. You were specifically ordered to maintain quarantine around that sector. And you were specifically told that there were survivors who needed help, Sarah shot back. While you were holding committee meetings, people were dying. The risk was too great, the counselor replied coldly. We could not afford to lose more ships to the Devourer threat. Your reckless actions have endangered the entire fleet. Sarah stepped closer to the screen. My reckless actions saved 300 lives. And as for endangering the fleet, we're still here, and the Devourers aren't. Seems to me that makes us better at this than you are. The counselor's features flushed with anger. Your species' barbaric approach to warfare may have succeeded in this instance, but it cannot be sustained. The Devourers are spreading across 3 sectors. They have consumed entire civilizations. You cannot stop them with brute force alone. Maybe not, Sarah admitted. But we can slow them down. We can make them pay for every system they take. And we can save the people you've abandoned. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts. The counselor was right about one thing, the Devourers were spreading faster than anyone could stop them. But he was wrong about human methods being unsustainable. Humans had learned something during their long, violent history that the peaceful species of the galaxy had forgotten. Sometimes, the only way to deal with a bully is to hit them back harder than they hit you. Captain, Rodriguez called out, we're receiving multiple distress signals from the Centauri sector. Looks like the Devourers are making another push. Sarah nodded grimly. Signal the fleet. We're moving to intercept. Captain, Park said quietly, we lost 3 ships getting these people out. If we keep this up, we'll save lives, Sarah cut him off. That's what we're here for. As the Terran Defiance set course for the Centauri sector, Sarah stood once again at the bridge viewport. Behind her, the rescued Zephyrians were being settled into temporary quarters. In front of her, the stars held countless worlds full of people who might need saving. The Galactic Council could play their political games. The elegant navies of the core worlds could retreat to their safe harbors. But humanity would be there, standing in the gap between civilization and the darkness that wanted to consume it. Because that's what humans did. The journey to the Centauri sector took 18 hours at maximum burn. During that time, Sarah received constant updates on the situation. The Devourers had hit the agricultural world of Kepler 442b, a planet that supplied food to dozens of systems. Early reports suggested that the planetary defenses had held for about 6 hours before being overwhelmed. Any word from the local garrison? Sarah asked. Negative, Captain. Last transmission was 12 hours ago. It was not encouraging. Sarah nodded. She'd learned not to expect good news when dealing with the Devourers. The biomechanical horrors seemed to exist for one purpose, to consume everything they encountered and transform it into more of themselves. What about civilian evacuations? The Kepler system has a population of 12 billion. Even if they'd started evacuating the moment the Devourers appeared, they couldn't have moved more than a few million people. 12 billion. Sarah felt the weight of that number settling on her shoulders. Even if the human fleet performed miracles, they couldn't save everyone. But they could try to save some. Signal from Admiral Hayes, Rodriguez reported. He's requesting a strategic conference. The main screen flickered to show the grizzled face of Admiral Marcus Hayes, commander of the human fleet. He was a veteran of the water wars on Earth, and his scarred features had seen enough combat to last several lifetimes. Captain Chen, he said without preamble, I've been reviewing your action reports from the Helix Nebula. Good work saving those Zephyrians, but we need to talk about sustainability. Sir? We've got 17 ships left in the fleet, Sarah. 17. The Devourers are hitting systems faster than we can respond to them. If we keep taking these losses, we'll be extinct before the month is out. Sarah felt her jaw tighten. What are you suggesting, Admiral? I'm suggesting we pick our battles. Save the worlds we can actually save, and let the others go. Like the Council is doing? Hayes' expression hardened. The Council is made up of politicians. We're soldiers. We understand that sometimes you have to make hard choices. And abandoning billions of people is a hard choice I'm not ready to make. Then you'd better come up with a better plan, Captain. Because right now, we're just throwing good ships after bad. The transmission ended, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts. Hayes was right, the human fleet was dying by inches. But there had to be another way. Captain, Lieutenant Kim called out, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Kepler system. It's strange. Put it through. The screen showed a human face, a woman in her 30s with short brown hair and intelligent eyes. She was wearing civilian clothes, but her posture suggested military training. This is Dr. Elena Vasquez, Chief Xenobiologist at the Kepler Research Station. I'm broadcasting this message from our emergency shelter 3 kilometers below the planet's surface. We've been studying the Devourers for the past 8 hours, and I think we've found something important. Sarah leaned forward. Go on. The Devourers aren't just mindless consumers. They're following a pattern, a specific sequence of consumption that suggests they're looking for something. We think they're after the quantum resonance crystals that power our terraforming equipment. Why would they want those? Because they're not just eating matter, they're eating information. The crystals store vast amounts of data about planetary ecosystems, genetic structures, even consciousness patterns. If they get enough of these crystals, they might be able to think like us. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. How many people are with you? 43 researchers and their families. We've got maybe 6 hours of life support left, and the Devourers are starting to dig toward us. Hang tight, Doctor. We're on our way. Sarah turned to her bridge crew. Plot a course for the Kepler Research Station. Maximum burn. Captain, Park said quietly, if Dr. Vasquez is right about the crystals, we might be looking at something bigger than just saving a few dozen people. Agreed. But first, we save the people. Then we figure out what it means. The Terran Defiance dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system to find a scene of devastation. The planet's orbital stations were nothing but debris, and the surface was covered with the organic growths that marked Devourer presence. But unlike other consumed worlds, this one was still crawling with activity. Sensor reading? Sarah asked. Massive Devourer presence on the surface. At least 200 biosignatures, and they're all concentrated around the research station. It's like they're mining. Sarah studied the tactical display. The research station was built into the side of a mountain, with the emergency shelter located deep underground. The Devourers had covered the entire mountainside with their biomechanical constructs, and were methodically drilling toward the shelter. How long until they reached the survivors? Based on their current rate of progress, maybe 4 hours. Then we need to move fast. All ships, prepare for surface assault. The human fleet dropped into low orbit and began their bombardment. Nuclear fire blossomed across the mountainside as they tried to clear a path to the station. But the Devourers were learning, they'd constructed shielding that absorbed much of the blast energy. Kinetic rounds are having limited effect, Torres reported. Their bioarmor is adapting to our weapons. Sarah gritted her teeth. Then we go in personally. Prep the assault shuttles. Captain, the radiation levels down there are survivable with proper equipment. We've done this before. 20 minutes later, Sarah was once again leading an assault team toward a hostile planet. But this time, the enemy was waiting for them. The first Devourer construct they encountered was the size of a house, with multiple weapon arrays grafted onto its organic hull. It opened fire with energy beams that could melt steel, forcing the assault team to take cover behind the wreckage of a destroyed vehicle. Sergeant Martinez, flank left. Corporal Johnson, lay down suppressive fire. The assault team moved with practiced efficiency, using their superior tactics to outmaneuver the larger enemy. Human weapons might be primitive, but human soldiers were very good at killing things. The construct went down under concentrated fire, but 2 more appeared to take its place. Sarah realized they were fighting a losing battle. For every devourer they killed, 2 more emerged from the organic growth covering the mountainside. "This isn't working," she said into her communicator. "We need a new approach." "Captain," Dr. Vasquez's voice came through the calm, "we've been monitoring your assault. The devourers are protecting something in the main laboratory. If you can reach it." "What kind of something?" "The quantum resonance crystals. They've built some kind of processing facility around them. If you can destroy it, they might lose interest in the planet." Sarah checked her ammunition. "How do we get there?" "There's a maintenance tunnel that leads directly to the lab. But it's crawling with spawn. Give me the coordinates." The next hour was a nightmare of close-quarters combat. Sarah's team fought their way through tunnel after tunnel, facing waves of devourer spawn that seemed to appear from the walls themselves. Their ammunition ran low, then ran out entirely, forcing them to rely on backup weapons and pure determination. Finally, they reached the laboratory. What they found there made Sarah's blood run cold. The devourers had built a massive biomechanical structure around the quantum crystals. Energy flowed between organic conduits and mechanical components, creating something that looked like a cross between a computer and a living brain. And at its center, suspended in a web of neural fibers, was a human head. "Jesus Christ," whispered Sergeant Martinez. Sarah approached the structure cautiously. The head belonged to a middle-aged man with graying hair and kind eyes. According to the nameplate on his lab coat, he was Dr. Michael Chen, no relation to Sarah, despite the name. "Doctor?" Sarah said softly. The head turned toward her, and the eyes opened. When he spoke, his voice was layered with harmonics that suggested multiple sources. "Captain Sarah Chen. We have been studying your species. You are fascinating. We're getting you out of here, Doctor." "No," he said, and his voice became clearer. "No, Captain. I am beyond saving. But I can help you understand." "Understand what?" "The devourers are not evil. They are desperate. Their home galaxy is dying, consumed by dark matter. They came here seeking new forms of life to preserve. But they do not understand individual consciousness. They only know collective thought." Sarah felt her heart sink. "How many of them are there?" "Billions. Trillions. And they are all connected. What one learns, they all learn. What one experiences, they all experience. They thought consciousness was something that could be consumed and stored. Can they be stopped?" Dr. Chen's expression grew sad. "Not destroyed. But perhaps redirected. The crystals contain the sum of human knowledge about consciousness, about individuality. If they can be made to understand what they are destroying." "How?" "The central processing node. If you can reach it, if you can interface with it directly, you might be able to show them." Sarah looked at the biomechanical structure surrounding them. "Where is it?" "The planet's core. They have converted the entire planetary mass into processing substrate. But Captain, the interface process is not survivable." Sarah felt cold certainty settling over her. "How long do we have?" "The process is accelerating. Once they finish here, they will spread to other systems. Eventually, they will consume everything." Sarah activated her communicator. "All teams, this is Captain Chen. We need to evacuate the research station immediately. All personnel to the shuttles." "Captain," Dr. Vasquez's voice came through, "we're reading massive energy buildup throughout the planet. Whatever they're doing, it's reaching critical mass." "Copy that. We're on our way." Sarah turned back to Dr. Chen. "Doctor, is there any way to slow them down?" "The crystals, if you can overload them, it might disrupt the process. But only temporarily." Sarah nodded and pulled out her remaining demolition charges. "Thank you, Doctor. For what it's worth, I'll make sure people remember what you did here. Captain, tell them we tried to preserve what makes us human. Sarah placed the charges around the crystal array and activated the timer. Let's go, people. We've got 30 seconds. The assault team raced through the tunnels as the charges detonated behind them. The entire mountain shook as the explosion tore through the Devourer processing facility. Behind them, they could hear the biomechanical constructs screaming, a sound that would haunt Sarah's dreams for years to come. They reached the shuttles just as the planetary surface began to convulse. The Devourers were pulling back, their processing interrupted by the destruction of the crystal array. But Sarah knew it was only temporary. All ships, immediate departure, she ordered. We need to get back to the fleet. As the Terran Defiance pulled away from Kepler 442b, Sarah stood on the bridge watching the planet shrink in the distance. They'd saved 43 people, but billions more were still down there, trapped in the Devourer biomass. Captain, Park said quietly, Admiral Hayes is requesting another conference. Sarah nodded grimly. She had information now, crucial intelligence about the Devourer's true nature and goals. But she also had a terrible understanding of what they were really facing. Admiral Hayes' scarred face appeared on the screen, and Sarah could see the strain of command wearing on him. Captain Chen, I've been reviewing the reports from Kepler. Is it true that the Devourers are connected to some kind of collective consciousness? Yes, sir. And there are trillions of them. They're not just consuming our galaxy, they're trying to preserve it. They just don't understand what they're destroying in the process. Hayes was quiet for a long moment. That changes things. If they're all connected, then conventional tactics won't work. We can't outfight them, and we can't outrun them. What are you thinking, Admiral? I'm thinking it's time to call in some favors. The Council may have written us off, but there are other species out there who might be willing to help. Sarah felt a spark of hope. The Krylon Empire? Among others. The Devourers hit one of their outer systems last week. They're not happy about it. The Krylon were a warrior race, not as technologically advanced as the Council species, but fierce fighters who respected strength above all else. If anyone would be willing to stand with humanity against the Devourers, it would be them. What do you need from me, Admiral? I need you to go to the Krylon homeworld and convince their war council that this is a threat worth fighting. Take the Terran Defiance and whatever escort you can manage. And Sarah? Yes, sir? Don't come back empty-handed. This might be our last chance. The journey to the Krylon homeworld took 3 days, during which Sarah prepared for the most important diplomatic mission of her career. The Krylon respected strength, but they also respected honesty. She would have to convince them that humanity's cause was worth their blood.